So let's dial back a little bit and get away from incentives and talk about how solar actually works. So just for the people here in the room.
Try this one. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. I'm not really a performer, so this whole mic thing is a little new to me. Does this work?
Yes, you're good.
We're good?
Yes.
So the way solar works, the panels, not everybody really qualifies. There are a couple varying factors that play into it. You have to have sun hours. That's really what it all comes down to. Bright sunshiny days like yesterday, day before, great. Overcast days like today, it still works. The panels go off of UV rays. So essentially what it is, it comes down to just the amount of sun hours that you're getting. So, now how does that play into it? Well, roof placement. Southern facing roofs are the best. We're in the northern hemisphere. So a southern facing roof is fantastic because the sun literally just rises in the east, sets in the west, cooks it all day long. So from there, the pitch, if you got a Harry Potter castle type roof, that's wonderful. It's a beautiful house. Not the best for solar because you're limited on the amount of sun hours you're going to get. Although if you have a little bit more of a reduced pitch, then it's going to work well in your favor. Secondly, lack of shading. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my associate Joe Arceo.
Sorry I'm late. Crazy traffic from Wisconsin.
So we're also on Zoom.
Okay, awesome.
Essentially though, so roof placement, southern facing roof is great, okay? Getting the right amount of sun hours. Now, another factor into it is shading. As wonderful it is aesthetically, if you've got trees or if, you live in a nice area like that, solar and trees don't get along very well. Essentially, there's a reason why we sit underneath a shady tree in the summertime because it shades us from the sun. So it doesn't really work out very well. The sun is, the UV rays, whatnot, they're not gonna get through that. So, these are all different varying factors into how it's gonna produce. And at the end of the day, that's what you want, production. The right amount of sun hours, the right amount of exposure, that's what's really gonna allow you to produce and be as effective as you can. So the panels go on your roof. From there, what happens is they produce the power that you need. And then what it does is it goes in to your meter, feeds your home directly. Now, currently, the way you're getting your power is from ComEd. It comes through the grid, okay? Either it comes in from a line off a pole or it comes in off the ground. I'm sure you've seen your meter on the side when you're cutting the lawn or you're, doing any, yard work or whatnot. The meter feeds directly into your home. The reason it goes to the meter, frankly, it's just to monitor what you're using and bill you for it accordingly. That's really what it comes down to. Most people don't look at their bill. One of the interesting things that I've learned in doing this over the last 5 years is actually educating people on looking at their bill. I'll sit down with people and they haven't seen their bill in 2 years. It's an interesting fact. But on your bill, it actually shows how many kilowatt hours you use, how much power you're using, okay? And with that, that's what they bill you for accordingly. So as the power comes in through the meter, you're being charged. Now with solar, you're getting it straight from the source, right off your roof. So you're almost bypassing ComEd, all right? During the day, you're almost shutting them down directly. So they're not feeding power to you. You're getting the power direct from the panels. The power is now going into your home, feeding your home directly, powering you. You are your own power source, independent from them. Now, March to October, all this daylight, all this sunshine. I mean, sun went down at what, 9 o'clock last night? Although it was raining out here, I know that. When your home is satisfied, the panels are still making power. Where's the power go? It goes out in the grid, okay? So now your meter, for some of you that remember the spinning wheel, okay, now it's spinning backwards. essentially what happens is you are feeding power out into the grid. You're helping ComEd meet their renewable energy standard. Okay, every utility company across the board nationwide has to get at least 20 to 30% of their power from renewable energy sources. It's a federal mandate. So you're helping them meet that need without them having to build the infrastructure. That being the case, what happens, how do you get rewarded for that? Okay, so they're taking the power that you're giving them, they're selling it to your neighbors at a profit, and then at night, when there's no sun, you're gonna draw off the grid, but you're gonna get the power that you gave them back at an equal 1-to-1 kilowatt credit. For every kilowatt of power you give them, you're gonna get back equally. So essentially, it's like a trade-off. And those credits accumulate on an annual basis from April to April. So essentially what's happening is, it's not just January to January, it's April to April. And the nice thing about that is you're starting out of the gate with a longer sun hour, longer sunny days. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, the benefit of solar, because you're taking, basically you're making your own production, and you're also getting compensated for the overproduction that you're making. Now, getting into incentives and how they incentivize you, I guess that's a good way to dovetail that. Essentially what happens is you've got the federal tax credit. We'll get into that in a second, but let's get into the state incentives, because those are really huge here in Illinois. We're a company that's licensed, we're a local family-owned company, and we're licensed here in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. And one of the things I've discovered is that Wisconsin and Indiana have no state incentives whatsoever. They're not very solar friendly. Illinois, again, is one of the best states in the country for going solar, and they reward you based upon what you produce. So it is a check cut to you based upon what you're producing, on an annual basis.
Well, depending on what size system you're building. So
Why don't you step by me, just step by me only because of the mic.
Okay. Thank you. I got a big mouth too, so I can.
He's Greek, they talk a lot.
So depending on what size system you're building, every system is unique to the home and to how you use your energy. And what I mean by that is I can build two 5-kilowatt systems. One produces 7,000 kilowatt hours and one produces 4,000 kilowatt hours. Well, ComEd is going to reward that larger production based on what you consume. Think of it like profit sharing. You create energy. You can only consume what you need in the moment. That energy goes out into the grid. ComEd takes that energy, sells it to your neighbor, and says, we're going to profit share back with the production with you. So if you can build a 5-kilowatt system that produces 7,000 kilowatt hours, that's going to give you the ability to have more available energy when they need it, giving you more credits. And that's how they adjust what they call the SREC, the State Renewable Energy Credit. Illinois is one of the first states that, well, for lack of a better term, that stepped in it. They went to the federal government and said, we're going to be 30% renewable energy by 2030. Well, somebody that sits behind a really big desk that makes a whole lot more money than we do screwed up. What they realized after the fact, they had already committed to the federal government, is that they need about 7.5% of residential homes to go solar to hit that. I'm sure if you've driven out like 39, you've seen all the windmills and all the solar fields. You guys paid for that. If you actually look on your bill, there is a renewable energy portfolio that they charge you anywhere from 49 cents to $4, depending on what you spend, that goes right back into their renewable energy portfolio that allows them to build more solar panels and more windmills. It also helps fund those people who go solar. So like if you're not going solar and you're paying your ComEd bill, there's a small portion of what you pay that help pay the SREC for somebody else to go solar.
It's actually a line item on it if you look under, so your ComEd bill is broken down into 3 parts. You've got supply, delivery, taxes and fees. The interesting part is the biggest part of your bill is taxes and fees. And one of those line items is actually renewable energy portfolio.
And the more energy you use from ComEd, the more they charge you in taxes and fees. So you actually give more money to the people that are going solar or to fund ComEd's renewable energy projects that they have going on. Because of all that, that's why you have a state renewable energy credit, is that without residential homes going solar, they'll never get to their number. And if they don't get to their number, they lose out massively on federal tax incentives that come to ComEd and to the state. So Wisconsin, I live in Wisconsin, so and I deal with them a lot. But in Illinois, they are pushing very hard right now. That's why the net metering is so good. All the incentives are great, but at the end of the day, net metering is what makes residential solar so feasible for the average homeowner, is that those credits that you get, unlike a lot of other states, like I live in Wisconsin, my credits last from the start of a billing period to the end of the billing period. If I don't use them, what I get back is very little. With state renewable energy credits in Illinois, you can produce it today and not use it till November.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, going from April to April. And just to come back real quick, when I was talking about how that overproduction that you send out, that's net metering. That's the term that it's called. And basically, the net metering is, it varies from state to state, but it's a common, it's a common phrase, and it's a common, determination in regards to how that's, how it's defined. But at the end of the day, Illinois, again, like he said, Wisconsin, that one-to-one credit. So essentially, the kilowatt you give, you get back. So at night, when you're drawing off the grid, you're getting your power back instead of them billing you for it. Now, in Wisconsin, it's only good for 30 days, like Joe just said. Illinois, again, April to April. And that essentially is, when he refers to net metering, that's what that means.
And that's what makes Illinois such a great state for renewable energy, is that they are doing everything they can to incentivize you currently today to go solar. As we all know, the big, beautiful bill passed last week, and there are massive changes coming to the federal incentive. And I think the biggest one right now, at least that we are aware of, is something called domestic content. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against it at all. It just means that more product is going to be built in the United States. And in order to receive your tax credit, you're going to have to use a manufacturer and a provider that only uses domestic content. That's great, other than the fact that the whole idea behind solar is how do we save you as much money as possible over the longest period of time. And if I have to start with a higher price of cost of goods because they're produced here, that's going to affect how much money you save throughout the lifespan of the system. And we're talking about systems that will run 40 to 60 years easily. And as we get into some of the equipment and why that's so important, what we've come to find out is that the Midwest in general has probably some of the best solar production we've ever seen over long term. Better than Miami, better than California, better than Arizona, because the panels have become so efficient that the degradation here in the Midwest is so small. We don't have 8 months a year above 80 degrees. We don't have 4 months a year below negative 25, even though it feels like it at times, right? But
did yesterday.
The panel, it was warm yesterday. The panels, they stay within the optimal operating range throughout the entire year. So they don't burn themselves up over time or freeze themselves out over time. So the degradation ratings are so small that you could look out 50 years from now, this panel produced 90% of what it did day one.
Yeah, and that's one of the advantages here in the Midwest, okay? Florida, Texas, Arizona, yeah, sun all the time. But the panels are getting beat up constantly. Like Joe just said, the degradation rate is 0.5%, okay? So on average, most of them are lasting, 85%. And granted, these are tier 1 panels. They're going up on satellites in space. These are panels directly made for this specifically. So it's meant to last for a long time. So again, out of the box, from day one, they're going to produce 50% of what they did from the start. Or excuse me, 90% of what they did from the start. And we get a better, you'll get a better, longer lasting lifespan out of it here in the Midwest because you're not getting beat up all the time.
So, Steve kind of explained how solar works, right? Panel takes in UV light, converts that UV light into direct current energy, which our homes can't consume. An inversion system takes the DC energy, inverts it to AC energy, alternating current energy, feeds the meter, feeds the house. And all the particular parts of the system, each one of them plays a part in the overall efficiency and the overall durability of the system. So we've chosen panels, inverters, even the rack that we use is all based around how do we give you the most longevity and give you the most production during that time. So panels have three things that make them great. First one is the warranty. Warranty is 25 years across the board. And the warranty actually states in order to be a tier 1, grade 1 product that the manufacturer has to guarantee if you have a panel go bad in year 25, that they will replace it with a brand new panel in your system that will fit seamlessly. They can't cut you a check for what your degraded panel was worth. So when you go solar, you know your panels are gonna run for a minimum perfectly for 25 years. Nice thing about panels is that they're inanimate. There's no moving parts in a solar system. So once they go up, for the most part, they just do their thing, and they're virtually indestructible. They'll take golf ball size hail at 145 miles an hour, 365 days a year and not crack. They're 150 times stronger than the average roof shingle, part one. Two, when you pair that with an inversion system that is what we call micro inversion, it means that each panel has its own inverter. One panel is snow covered, leaf covered, isn't functioning. It does not affect the rest of the chain. The rest of the chain can do exactly what it's supposed to. Unlike in the old days, we had one inverter that sat on the side of your house, and think of it like incandescent Christmas tree lights. You step on one, they all go out. Versus LED lights, you step on one, the rest of them continue to work. Again, making sure that you're going to continue to produce energy, even if you were in a situation where a panel wasn't doing what it was supposed to. Anything above what they call 17.2, which is kind of an abstract number, that's the efficiency rating of a panel, is considered tier 1, grade 1. The panel that set the world on fire was made in 2019 by Tesla. It had an efficiency rating of 18.2, and it kind of blew everything else out of the water. But solar has come a very long way in a couple of years as we've gotten closer to this point where the big beautiful bill steps in and things are going to change. Panel we're using today, less expensive than the Tesla panel.
I know we're supposed to wait to the end of the question.
No, fire away.
This pertains to now. What if a big tree limb, you know, they could be hundreds of pounds.
Oh, sure.
Smashed it, what's the warranty or how's it?
So anything that's manufacturer related is covered by the manufacturer. Anything that's active God related will be covered by your homeowner's insurance. And the nice thing is most homeowners insurance now, they will actually reward you for going solar. One, they have green initiatives, but what we've come to find out is that once the panel's on your roof, with the exception of a tree getting ripped out of the ground and hitting your house, they will actually do a better job of protecting your roof than a shingle will. And what we've come to find out also on your benefit is that where you're putting panels, no longer in the summertime will you have sun pounding down on your roof, irradiating your attic, making your air conditioning work harder. All that energy that was getting pushed into your attic is in the form of heat is now being absorbed by the panel and turned into electricity. So what we've come to find out, depending on the size of home, typically anywhere from 4 to 6% reduction in your AC over the time in which you use it.
Oddly enough, that's one of the great benefits about it. It's not just producing power, but it's actually protecting your house.
Yeah.
You know, that's, again, that southern portion of your roof that's getting beat up by the sun all year long, you know, heating up your roof, degrading your shingles and your roof, it's now actually, you've got a layer of protection.
I've actually been on some jobs where we've had people that already had solar, and we're going back 20 or 25 years ago, and now they're either updating or even in some places replacing their solar, as now the solar panels are considerably better than they were in the past. But even those old panels, we go up and remove them, and the roof underneath is brand new. And the shingles are 25 years old. So there's a lot of benefit, not only to what it's going to produce for you, but also how it can protect your roof and protect the degradation of your shingles.
And to kind of just address your question one other, you know, just once more a little bit further, sir. The panels they're monocrystalline panels, and they're polyurethane sealed, so it's not necessarily, we talk about glass on the roof, but it's not glass, okay? what, 3 feet by,
3.5 by 5.
yeah, 3.5 by 5, weigh about 40 pounds. It's not heavy weight on your roof. It's just another great layer of protection that's really extending the shelf life of your home, and it's an investment. And, you know, getting back to what he said, and he talked about act of God, this and that, your homeowner's insurance would cover it. This isn't like having a pool or a hot tub where your homeowner's insurance is going to go up because it's liability. This isn't a liability. It's actually, you know, a bona fide investment in the home.
The most I've ever seen is
I'm saving for a
$38.
house, if I can, things get better, I want to buy one way out and get it cheap like my brothers and sisters. If I buy an old house and say normally you'd get insulation, would this like make up for putting insulation through your whole top of your house? Would it deflect, say heat and air conditioning?
It'll help. You know, the whole idea with insulation is two parts. One is to keep out what you don't want and to keep in what you do. Yes, the solar panels are absolutely going to help keep out what you don't want. That doesn't mean you don't want to have good insulation, because when you pair them together, what you're essentially doing is just making the home overall more efficient. And at the end of the day, solar is all about efficiency. The more efficient you are with your usage, the more your solar is going to offset what you would have used from ComEd. And the goal at the end of the day is we don't mind giving ComEd some of our credit, some of our electric, and they're going to give us some profit sharing or credit back with it. But you don't want to give them an excess. You want to consume as much as you possibly can off the panel, because everything you consume off the panel means that's one less kilowatt hour you're consuming from the utility. I would say that if you ask 10 people who have gone solar, all 10 will tell you they love their solar. They hated the process. That's where we step in and try to make it easier. But the idea isn't to become completely self-sufficient and off-grid. It's to have ComEd there if you need them. They're their big backup for you. But that for the most part, you're very self-sufficient, because the two things that solar guarantees you: one, you're never going to raise the rates on yourself. And two, is that at some point, you want to have an end date to paying for your power, if at all possible. Now, Illinois gives us more options than most to make it more feasible for more people to go solar. But realistically, no matter where you live, the biggest thing about solar is, how do I become more predictable? In the Midwest, in general, we go 7 to 9% year-over-year rate increase. I bought my home in 2016 in Wisconsin. I have a Lion Energy, and when we moved in, I was paying 11 cents a kilowatt. The last bill I checked, I was 23 cents. We've been there, what, 9 years? It's doubled in 9 years. That's why people are going solar. How do I get away from being affected by inflation? Because we have absolutely no control over how they raise our rates. National averages are about 3.5% year over year. The reason why the Midwest is more is we run our AC typically from, maybe the early part of June. If it's a really warm summer through September, maybe the first week of October, that's when they get us. That's when we use the majority of our electric. The rest of the year, we're either gas forced heat. Some people have electric heating. Feel sorry for them. And two is we have our windows open, so we're not running as much electric.
It's a money grab.
Yep.
And as I started off in the beginning, we don't have a choice. And that's one of the advantages of solar. It gives us that choice. It gives us that power to actually turn around and go to the utility company and be like, I didn't sign up for this rate increase. At the end of the day, I think we've all seen on the news what happened with, the former Speaker of the House. There was a corruption scandal with ComEd and the state. Who's paying for that fine that ComEd had to pay? Over $600 million. We are. See it right on my bill. They just raised their rates again. They're always going to raise rates. Like Joe said, solar gives you predictability, okay? Because what you're doing now is you're making your own power, and it's a matter of just handling the equipment, paying that off in a certain way, in a certain fashion. It's just changing the direction of who you pay. At the end of the day, the biggest question is this, okay? Do you care about where your power comes from, or do you care about how much you pay for it? That's the biggest thing. And if you have the option to create your own power, and you set you have a fixed cost and you know what it's going to be, that gives you, real predictability. At the end of the day, that's just what it really comes down to.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the idea is predictability, to know exactly what you're paying for and what you're getting from it, and to try to stave off as much as possible the inflation. That's the thing that's killing everybody right now, right? I remember.
Camera.
That's fine, I can move it.
No, it's but you to move around, he's going to follow you with the camera.
Okay. I remember paying 99 cents for a dozen eggs. It's $7 for eggs right now, right? We don't control that. This is the first time that we've had an alternative option to what we've always had to do, right? Before renewable energy, you had two choices. You paid your electric bill or you lived by candlelight. Right? I have teenagers, that's not going to work. They would murder me if they couldn't charge their phones and their electronics, right? So we just have to make a paradigm shift and understand that we still can get all the power that we need. There's just a much more efficient way to do it that in the long run is going to benefit the homeowner. I'll be the first one to admit, I've sat, and I actually trained Steve, so I've sat thousands and thousands of homes. And I will tell you that every single person that goes solar loves it, as long as they understand how it works. And what I mean by that is it's a long game. Think of it like a scale. In the beginning, if you have a great southern roof, you have great production, you're going to start out very similar to what you're currently paying for your average median bill for electric today. The difference is anything that comes off the panel is static, or it's locked into a pricing system that doesn't allow that escalation to just go crazy. So you may start like this. This is your solar side. You may be paying a few more dollars than what your average median bill is with ComEd. The difference is when they raise your rates, this side moves, and it moves quickly. And at some point you cross over, and that's where solar becomes extremely conducive, because now you're actually paying less for your solar and anything you're using from the utility versus what your average median bill would have been with ComEd. The difference is that it doesn't stop there. ComEd's going to continue to raise your rates. Every year, year over year, you get further and further away from what your neighbor is paying for the same amount of usage that you have.
What kind of a time frame are you talking about with this transition?
It all depends on the system. I have systems that produce like crazy, and I'm talking in a 4 or 5 year period. Typically, by the time you get to 12 to 15 years, if you're not at that, what they call the buyback rate, at that point, we're probably the guys that are going to tell you straight up in the beginning, probably not the most conducive thing based on your production.
And that's one of the reasons why we talked, I mentioned earlier, not everybody qualifies for solar. Okay, roof placement's key. The amount of shading. Do you live in a forest or do you live in a new development? These are all varying factors. And that's one of the reasons why we sit down with people and we consult with them. Our job is to educate. At the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're here to figure out. I met with a gentleman yesterday in Skokie, Illinois. He's got a heat pump. He's got an electric vehicle. He's got 3 teenagers. Okay, and oddly enough, he has I think if you're familiar with the, kind of like the Skokie northwest side of the city, it's a traditional, box house, separate garage, and he's paying on average $300 a month for electricity. It's crazy. And the thing that he told me, he went on a budget. He doesn't need to. He's a very successful individual. He's in finance, but he's like, I had to go on a budget because of the fact that I can't reel in. I have no idea what I'm going to be paying and they just take it right out of his bank account. He decided to do this because of the fact that this gives him some predictability. In addition to that, dovetailing off what Joe said, here's one of the other things that's, most people don't think about, okay? Every month we pay our electric and gas bill, okay? Who profits from that? ComEd and their board, their investors, okay? It's a liability. Money on the bus, okay, opposed to having your own vehicle. Whereas with solar, now you're not investing in them, you're investing in yourself. Solar actually increases the value of your home.
Especially here, especially in the Chicagoland area. So nationally, these are not our numbers, these are Zillow numbers. Zillow's probably
Zillow and Forbes.
Zillow's done more research on real estate than anyone over the last 10 years. And they say nationally, it'll add about 4 to 4.5, at the very top end, 6% to the added value to your home. In Chicagoland, just because our real estate is so, it's so booming by comparison to, you go to the middle of Iowa, probably about 8%. 8% added value to the value of your home. And the crazy thing is, it's not something that is very interpretational. If you walk into my house, when we had a flood, I had to redo my entire kitchen. We decided to go with navy blue cabinets and white quartz countertops. We love it. Somebody else could walk in and say, that's hideous, right? Now it has no value to them. With solar, it's just solar. You're buying a home that has a power plant built into it that you're able to, if you're buying the home, you can essentially mortgage that in and step around paying ComEd and the, again, inflated rates. At the end of the day, if we said nothing else other than what does solar provide for you, it provides the predictability and takes away a significant portion of your rate increases going forward. Where people get caught up, like I said earlier, is they expect this instantaneous, like, solar's gonna save my life, it's installed, and I'm gonna start saving money out of the gate. No. Solar is a long game that gets better and better for the investor or the homeowner year over year. And for most people that we install, we're talking about the rest of their life, they're gonna have solar. Their kids are gonna have solar on the home if the kids get the home afterwards. So the investment starts out very small, but you're every year pulling a larger and larger return from something that currently today costs you nothing out of pocket to start. 5 years ago when I started, 6 years ago when I started in the industry, you could be like the most gung-ho environmentalist, I'm going solar. Yes, I want to do this. And the next question I would have for you is, great, can you cut me a check for 10 grand? That's what it takes just to get the process started. Well, when the federal government got involved, all that went away.
Okay, I don't know why I'm asking my question.
That's fine.
It's popping in my head. So in other words, if I get an old house and I want to insulate the whole inside, then I get the overall bill should be lower than I would normally get, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Overall bill, you're one step ahead, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Depending on how you structure your solar from the financial side, will determine how fast you see a return. What I mean by that is, if you buy your forever home, and the whole idea is that you're gonna be there and it's gonna move on to another generation, and you purchase your solar system. Again, in the beginning, you're not gonna see crazy, gains versus what the utility company would have charged you. But every year, that gain gets larger and larger, and you have an end date. The day you pay your solar system off, all that power doesn't stop flowing. It just now comes to you absolutely at no cost. So if you were to fast forward 10 years in the future, even using very conservative numbers, if your bill today is $200 a month, in 10 years, that bill would be $320. Well,
Whereas with solar,
you wouldn't be there.
You wouldn't be that. You've got that predictability. You have that insulation. Like you said, now you're giving yourself insulation in regards to the rate hikes, the rate increases, and whatnot. I'm looking at time-wise. So I want to dial back a little bit. Let's get into the incentives. And one of the things, kind of like the elephant in the room, one of the things Joe brought up, the big, beautiful bill, and some of the changes that just happened from a legislative standpoint, on a federal standpoint. So that tax credit, that 30% that they gave you, that was supposed to be in effect until 2032. Unfortunately, the administration that we currently have is not very clean energy friendly, so to speak. Within that bill, they cut all renewable energy credits, be it solar, be it geothermal,
Wind, yeah.
be it wind, what have you. It's gone. It ends at the end of the year. Illinois is still great, with the incentives that they have, and it's still advantageous here. But poor Joe in Wisconsin, no state incentives. So for people in Wisconsin, people in Indiana, people in states that don't have those rewards for having clean energy and being environmentally friendly, it makes it a little bit more difficult now. So these are some of the things that are very impactful and just recent developments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not going to bring anything back, but like I said, the one thing we know for a fact is anything going forward will have domestic content as part of that. You're going to have to use the panels that the government says are okay to use, the inverters, the racking, all of that has a cost to it. And our job isn't to determine what panel we want to use based on a name or where it's built. It's how do we find the best panel to do what it's supposed to do as efficiently as possible, but also save you the most amount of money. As a consultant, I don't care what size system you build. I'm going to tell you what you need. If I can build that, I will. But I have many of my clients, like, I want to build 130, 140% to what I'm actually using today, because my kids are going to get older. I want to put in a hot tub. I want to maybe buy an electric vehicle, or I just want to make sure in the future I'm comfortable to go. I'll build whatever you want, as long as whatever I build you makes sense to save you money. Unless you just tell me, like, I want to tie a yellow ribbon around the tree and I'm environmentalist and I just want to produce energy to the best of my ability, great, I'll build that. But the way that we look at it is, our job is to, one, help the environment, but most importantly, how do we help you get away from what was never controllable before? So I'm not saying that they're going to take it away completely. That's what they're claiming today. We have people that keep their ear to the ground and deal with the legislation. We have lobbyists and everything in Washington are listening to all of this. And they've already kind of told us, like, yeah, we know that there's going to have something to do with domestic content. And when that happens, they may bring some incentive back, but I can tell you it will never be as good as it is today going forward. That's just how anything renewable goes. NEM 1 in Illinois was the best net metering in the country. They shifted to NEM 2. They're still the best in the country, but it's not as good as it was a year and a half ago. Next step would be NEM 3, and that'll be much more like what Wisconsin has versus what you have today. So if solar is an interest, as far as, is it feasible for me? It will never be more feasible than it is right now, while you still have a state renewable energy credit and you have the federal tax credit. One of the very smartest people in renewable energy, I had a chance to listen to speak at a symposium, and most of what he said, Stephen, I knew. Like, we've been doing this long enough. But the last thing he said really hit me hard was that today, if you decide to go solar, the federal government is basically rewarding you to do so. They do that so that 10 years from now, they can tax the hell out of all of us that didn't have, either one, didn't have the ability to go solar, two, they didn't have a house that qualified, or just didn't do it, so that they can turn around and tax us. They're talking 10 to 12% federal tax on top of what you're already taxed from your utility company. So imagine if you have a utility company that goes up 7% a year, and then on top of that, they tack on an additional 10%. If you were to take a graph of Southern California from 2012, an escalation graph, so where their rates are escalating, and you were to put a Midwest graph of 2025 and overlay them, they're exactly the same. We're just 12 years behind them. So scary point. 2012, Southern California, SDG&E, which is San Diego Gas and Electric, they're the big guys. They're the ComEd of Southern California. They were charging about what we charge today, about 18 to 20 cents, depending on where you live, per kilowatt hour. In 2013, SDG&E took the entire California Power Commission to Iceland. Behind closed doors, nobody even knew they went. 3 weeks, they wined and dined them. Came out of that meeting, and they talked the California Power Commission into giving them unlimited rights to raise rates for 3 years. In a 3-year span in Southern California, their rates went up 71%. Today, 12 years later, 13 years later, they went from 18 cents a kilowatt. The average bill, so average usage in Southern California is 51 cents a kilowatt. But if you're like most people and you are home between 5 PM and 9 PM, they consider that prime time and they charge you a surcharge of 30 cents. So now,
So it's almost $1.
81 cents a kilowatt. Now think about Southern California real estate. There are people in Southern California that pay more for their electric bill than they do for their mortgage. The difference is their mortgage is pretty much price locked. Their power bill is never going to stop going up. Power bill has, anywhere in the nation, you have not had a year where you didn't have some type of rate increase since the 1970s.
Out of anybody here, anybody online, when's the last time that you saw your bill go down?
Other than the credit they gave in ComEd for like 4 months before they hit us really hard in January.
No, I mean, it's,
So was there a credit recently? Because all of a sudden my bill is half of what it was last year and I don't know why.
So they did do, it's kind of creepy what they did. They gave, especially your higher usage people, I'm actually on both sides of the spectrum. If you're not the middle, you either use very little energy or you're really high, they started giving credits this time of year because it makes you lax, right?
right now your AC's on all the time, you're using a lot more. So you,
Hotter this year.
exactly, it is hotter this year, 100%. So they're tricking you into the fact that they're making you feel comfortable. It's like, oh, like you just said, I got a credit, I don't even understand why.
Well, I don't know if I got a credit, I just know my bill is.
If
Your
you
bill's
look-
lower.
If you take your bill, whatever your charges are, on a ComEd bill, it's very easy to read because each month is broken out and they actually tell you exactly what you use month over month. But look at whatever bill it is, take whatever your total charges are and divide it out. And you'll
Divided by,
find out-
the number of kilowatts that you used.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, so I guess I'm using less, but I don't know what I did to use less.
Good for you.
Have you made any changes in the home as far as efficiency goes?
Again, it's one of the things that they're doing because they're going to offset, they're offsetting.
I don't think that makes sense.
One of the things that they're offsetting is another rate hike that they put in. So the lower bill that you think that you,
Show that I'm using less.
it's right there on the bill, what you use. Yeah, 100%.
What, not only what you used this current month,
Well, yeah,
but go
so
back
if
13
the graph
months.
is showing this much last year and this much this year,
That's you are
that's just
using.
me,
That's
right?
you.
Yeah, that's just you.
Yeah.
That's just you. It's not necessarily a
not
credit.
right?
No,
But last
you're
year-
just being a little bit more
Why were they
efficient.
sucking, why were they saying I was using this much?
Here's the real interesting thing, okay? Look, we have to change seasons, okay? Sometimes we've got an October where, it's on average 50 degrees. Sometimes we got an October, it's 80 degrees. Sometimes it's snowing. You never know what's going to happen here, okay? So every year, there's a different seasonal feel. And that's reflective upon your bill as to what kind of habit you're going to have in regards to the windows being open or the AC on or the heat being on. So all that's, like, you may think it's a credit, but it's just the temperature's a little different this time of year than it was last year.
It was nicer last year.
A little cooler.
100%.
What I was saying is though, ComEd is, we monitor this all the time because we see bills every day. What ComEd did last year is they were going for a pretty good price hike in January. So like starting in like the end of July, was it July or first part of August? You started seeing these small credits on your bill and they were softening you up because instead of going after 5 or 6 or 7%, they went after 15%. So ComEd is so large by comparison to most utilities. Like for instance, just what ComEd controls, don't even take into downstate Illinois like Ameren. ComEd has more users than the entire state of Wisconsin does. And we have 4 utilities in Wisconsin. So they can very easily push the legislature to do what they want. Some of the smaller guys have started to catch on. In Wisconsin, where I live, we have 2 major big hitters. We've got Alliant Energy and we have We Energies. They're both huge. And they kind of caught on to what ComEd was doing, and instead of going to the legislature once a year to get a rate increase, they now do it twice a year. So they do it in January and they do it in June. Well, the 2 companies, they flip-flopped and got the legislature to pass 22.5% for both companies. ComEd, We Energies went in January and said, we need 20%. Alliance said we need 2%. They both got approved.
They just split it up.
And in June, they flipped it. Alliant went back and asked for 20%. We went back and asked for 2. So essentially, what does it mean for all of those people? We went up 22% last year.
You know, in summary, at the end of the day, what he's saying and talking about all these different things and going to legislation, can you do that? Can you call your congressman and say, hey, can I get a reduction in my bill? You can't. Going solar gives you that choice, gives you that ability.
Yeah, our job is just to help you figure out what the right way to do it based on what your needs are. I will tell you that 9 out of 10 people that we sit down with that their home qualifies for solar, they qualify for solar, and it makes sense, they go solar. The most of the times we have to turn people away because we just can't produce what they need or the home is just not conducive for it. Illinois will give you every ability, they give you every option. If you can't go solar in Illinois, you can't go solar because they will give you every opportunity to find a way to make it feasible for you.
Aside from taking out a forest.
Yeah.
Chris, why don't we open it up for anybody online?
An online question, can you talk about how snowfall would affect solar production?
Great question. So the software that we use actually takes a 30-year weather pattern into consideration. So we have an idea based off that weather pattern, how much snowfall is at your address annually. And that amount of production is actually taken out of your estimate. So like last year, we had a very mild winter as far as snow was concerned. All of our Midwest systems overproduced what they were estimated to because they were estimating more snow covering the panel that we didn't have. The nice thing currently today is the panel that we're using is black on black. I know Steve said earlier monocrystalline. To break that down, there's 2 types of panels in solar. There's a polycrystalline and a monocrystalline. Polycrystalline panels are essentially layers stuck together with photocells in them. The problem with that is where we live, we have hot and cold moisture. You end up getting moisture and condensation between the layers and it slows down production. Monocrystalline panel is a solid piece of glass. No moisture in between the layers, the photocells never get condensation on them, and because of that, they're considerably more efficient over time. But when you go to an all-black panel, think of it like a blacktop driveway. I have a blacktop driveway, my next door neighbor has a concrete driveway. If it snows, my driveway will melt faster than his will by a lot. And that's concrete, it's asphalt, and it's flat. Now to imagine taking all black panels that are glass, that are slick, and they're angled. Dead of February, it snows, the next morning the sun comes out. The first snow that's gonna melt is the snow that's on your panels.
Also, to answer that question directly, again, the panels are, you know, the production is based upon UV rays. So if you get a dusting of snow, it's no different than rain. UV is going to go right through it, just to answer your question directly. Are there more questions?
You answered the other one, which is about home value, so.
Cool.
Very good. Any other questions?
I would leave you with, like I said earlier, if you talk to 10 people who have gone solar, 10 out of 10 will tell you they love their solar. 9 out of 10 will tell you they hated the process. It used to be that if you wanted to go solar, you had to talk to the utility on your own, you had to talk to your jurisdiction, you had to find out what codes need to be met to go solar, and then you had to find an electrician, you had to find an installer. That's all changed. So Tron, we do not subcontract any portion of what we do. From the time that we sit with you as consultants, all the way through the engineering phase, all the way through the permitting and build stage, that is all done by a Tron employee and costs you nothing up until you're up and producing energy on your own. So solar, if it's conducive, it'll be conducive. The difference is that the headache is not there anymore. You decide you want to go solar, as long as your firm is reputable, you're basically going to wash your hands of it and let us do what we do. And you're just going to be kind of kept in the loop as we do it, right up through installation. And the nice thing with Illinois is they are very, very quick by comparison to most states to get you interconnected so that you can go solar in a very short amount of time versus where I live, it's average 90 to 120 days just to get through the project.
You know, like Joe said, he trained me. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years. The biggest thing that I've found, you know, we as a company, you know, A to Z, engineering to installation, it's all a Tron employee, okay? If we say it's blue, it's gonna be blue. What it really boils down to is this. there's great opportunities in Illinois with incentives. Granted, whatever's going to happen with the federal government's going to happen. The way legislation is, it's like the changing of the tides. But the biggest obstacle I've seen, it could make sense financially, it could make sense from an environmental standpoint. The biggest obstacle is change. People are afraid of change, okay? You have a choice. Up until this point, it's just ComEd, I gotta pay them, that's it. You have a choice now. It's just a matter of having the courage to want to make a change in your life.
Yeah, that paradigm shift. And I will tell you that, especially for Steve and myself, I pride myself on not being pushy. I'm not here to push you into anything. I'm here to help you make an educated decision on whether or not it's right for you, and then explain why you'd want to do that with myself and my company versus somebody else. But to give you an idea, when I started in the industry, if I came in on a Monday morning and I had 10 designs that we were working on, we were busy. Last Monday, that was 400. We had one engineer, and now we have a team of engineers. We have 3 master electricians on our staff just to handle what we would normally have, most companies would farm out. You can't just put a plan together willy-nilly. To give you an idea, our lead electrician, he gets $1,200 to sign his name if he doesn't work for the company. And he's got companies that call him all day, every day. He does all of our boards and all of our circuit drawings and everything and all of our load calculations right in-house. That's to ensure that we didn't hand this off to somebody else and we just took their word at what they are because they have a title. We want to make sure from start to finish that what we showed you, what you ended up choosing is actually what we can produce, and it's going to produce what we said over the time frame that we set it.
Our biggest thing is we want to give you the peace of mind to feel comfortable about making that change. And that's one of the reasons why, like Joe said, we're not necessarily pushy. That's why we want to thank the Schaumburg Public Library. We're just here to educate. That's the whole reason for having this, is just trying to let people know and just get the word out that you have that choice. It's our job just to educate you and to let you know that there is options out there. So definitely we want to thank the Schaumburg Public Library for turning around and allowing us to turn around and share some of this knowledge with the good folks in the community.
One last, I'm sorry, you ended on such a lovely message and note. There's one last item. Are there pricing model options, or is it just pay up front?
No, there's all kinds of options based on your design and what's most important to you. And when we come and do a consultation, everything is customized to your home and your usage. And then we will actually walk you through different options based on what's most important to the homeowner. So we typically deal with 3 types of clients. One is that one that says, I just want to pay for it. And absolutely, if you want to pay cash, we have options for that. That's very simple. Then we have homeowners that say, I want to pay this off as soon as possible, but I can't pay it off today. Those are what we call principal customers. They don't care what their monthly payment is. They care more about how fast can I get through the principal and get to that free energy. And then we have the customer that says, no, I am dead set on, it's all about a budget, and I have to stay within a certain, and trust me, I get that. We all live on a budget. But we can show you different resolutions based on what's most important to you. The only thing that we ask is if you leave us with a name, an address, and if you can get us a copy of that graph on your bill, then we can actually build you a savings report based strictly on your usage in your home, and then walk you through what options are best for you. Again, I am not a pushy person. I don't even consider myself to be a salesperson. I'm a consultant. All I can do is consult you. I can give you all the information to make an educated decision on whether or not it's right for you. And then if you decide it is, to be there kind of as the helping hand to guide as we go through the process.
Maybe to answer the question a little bit more directly, every system is different, every roof is different, every shading aspect is different. It all boils down to customizing everybody's individual needs based upon their usage and what they potentially can produce. And that's one of the reasons why we sit down and consult with people.
It's a different feel, having just a general conversation, it's a different feel when we're sitting across the table in your home and going through exactly what you use, how you want to use it, what the future plans are for the home, and what type of system we can build based on the roof and what the sun looks like on your roof.
And at the end of the day, is ComEd coming to your house, sitting at your table and consulting with you on your energy usage?
They will for a fee.
They will.
Yeah, they'll do a.
Chris, any other questions?
No, we're okay.
Appreciate it. Again, thanks to the Schaumburg Public Library.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, thanks for coming down from
No, no
Wisconsin.
worries.
Appreciate it. Chris, thank you for having us in.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it a ton. Obviously, I'm going to send out, I'm going to send some information regarding, I've got a very simple, slick, that talks about the state incentives, the federal incentives, how that works. I'm going to send that to Chris. He can send that out to some of you folks online. Thanks for taking the time to sit down and have a cup of coffee with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach out, via Chris. We're happy to consult.